To a lot of people, Pastor Tunde Bakare's worldview on Nigerian politics majorly revolves around the brief political association with President Muhammadu Buhari. At the same time, continues to confound many watchers of the political scene who believe that he has not been principled enough, especially in his assessment of the former principal's handling of matters of state since assumption of office in 2015. He has since in the past uttered certain prophetic statements about Nigeria's future. Did he foresee the devastation visited on Nigeria in the year 2021 by the coronavirus pandemic and even the recent uprising of young people against police brutality? Is Pastor Tunde Bakare happy with the government's handling of both developments? And what about the role of the church and, in fact, interfaith collaborations to save lives? And with another cycle of partisan politics bearing down on Nigeria, what should be the way forward? We're now being joined by Pastor Tunde Bakare of the Citadel Global Community Church and a former vice presidential candidate of the Action Congress of Nigeria. No, that's the CPC, I should say, for the 2011 presidential election alongside the current president of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari. It's a pleasure having you, sir. And I'd like to know what sense do you make of the events in Nigeria in the past weeks, owing to the fact that somebody that used to be your principal before is now the president of this country. And if things had worked for you then, you might as well be the vice president under President Muhammadu Buhari.
Thank you so much, Rufai Osini and the team, Dr. Ruben Abati and Tunde Abiola. It's good to be with you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you. If I may answer your question directly, nobody sometimes envision the kind of crisis we have been through in the past few weeks. But truth be told, character is not made in a crisis, it's only exhibited. And unfortunately, when this crisis hit, the response of the government had not fully satisfied the citizens. Would it have been different if I had been the vice president? I don't know. The truth is I'm not the vice president. But there's one thing we must understand: crisis refine life. In any major crisis, you get to understand the character of individuals because crisis will expose their character and the responses that they will be judged by. I'm in serious pain as a citizen for all that had befallen our country. And I just trust that the government will see that much more is required than what has been done right now in order to assuage the feelings, the hurt feelings of the citizens of this country. And we trust that in the days to come, we will see a lot of concerted efforts in this direction. It's a pity that some of our young people died, although there's been massive denial that there were no deaths. And we are yet to see families that were bereaved, except on social media, that we've been seeing some things. What happened in our nation should not have happened at all. And efforts must be made by all to ensure that there's no repeat performance.
Well, Pastor Bakare, once again, thank you for joining us on the morning show. About 24 hours ago, you were part of a webinar conference in which you were recommending restructuring as a way forward. A few days earlier, on October 25, you had given a State of the Nation address in which you talked about a new Nigeria. And in your introduction, you referred to the second stanza of Nigeria's old anthem, which ended with the reference that, well, the projection is to hand over to our children a banner without stain. But on October 20, we saw that banner stained with the blood of young Nigerians. You think restructuring will solve the problem? And what is your vision of this new Nigeria? When you talk about restructuring, what do you mean? IPOB breakup or a different kind of architecture?
Well, it's a totally different kind of architecture. I do not envision Nigeria breaking up, and I never thought about that at all. But truth be told, we are playing into the hands of the Jeroboams, according to the Bible, in our society, who are now demanding for secession to go our different ways. It was at the instance of Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. My constituency is the church, and I refer to the Bible to guide me. When Rehoboam did not respond positively and accurately to the demands of the citizens who were asking that the burden of taxation and oppression was too much for them. And they simply asked, reduce days so that we can serve you as king. He asked for 3 days, and after 3 days, he came to tell the people, my small finger is stronger than the loins of my father. What ended that was Jeroboam, who had been positioned, later became king of 10 tribes. To your tent, O Israel. Dr. Abati, any constitution that cannot bend is already aiming for, if it cannot bend, it will have to be broken. But I pray that will never happen in our country, that the government and those in leadership position, especially at the presidency, will become more responsive to the yearnings and aspiration of the people of Nigeria. Restructuring is not a new word. It has been here with us for a long time, since the Nadeko and Pronaco days in particular. And why are they demanding for restructuring? Is to do a holistic re-engineering of our nation so that we can be much more productive rather than being dependent entirely on oil, and so that each segment or each federating unit can match on and create a healthy competition amongst the states of the federation, and if you like, the geopolitical zones of the federation. We need to do that very fast. However, we must separate the chaff from the grain, the noise from the voice, and know exactly what we are talking about when we mention or use the word restructuring. Time had come for that. This nation is bleeding from all sports, and we cannot continue this way, each state going to the center every month to gather some remnant from the federal table. That had to stop. What we were, like Confucius said, is a study the past if you will divine the future. We must go back to what worked for us and begin to develop on it and even enhance it. And if I must say, by 2017 October, I'd already in a public lecture, State of the Nation broadcast, October 1, 2017, I'd already put pragmatic steps towards restructuring Nigeria in the public space. And when this administration came, I was delighted to find in 2018, the Nasir El-Rufai-led political reform group within APC, and all that they put together had been put at the disposal of this federal government, but nothing has been done. And that's in addition to all that we did at the national conference in 2014. Pressure must be put on government to sit with the people and to begin to think about how to re-engineer this country, because, like I said at the beginning, a constitution that cannot bend will eventually break.
Indeed, sir. Well, going back to your reference to Jeroboam, the Bible is replete with instances of where bad counsel has changed the destiny of individuals and of nations. What do you suggest needs to happen now? Because it appears that we are reaching critical mass, finally, with the NSAS process. Even the posture, as it were, of the president has changed. In yesterday's inauguration of the maiden National Youth Day, his comments seemed a lot more conciliatory than before. What should happen now? He made a request for the youth to outline concrete plans and communicate those concrete plans. How should that be done?
I would take it that Mr. President is very sincere about that statement. and that it means business this time around. I seriously hope so, and sincerely think he's very sincere about what he had said. Why do I say that? Because before now, there have been so much put together as concrete plans, more or less A to Z, of how to accomplish the restructuring of this country without shooting ourselves. For example, the 2014 National Conference has put together concrete plans and steps toward this. And if that is even by another administration, what exactly happened to the recommendations made since 2018, submitted to the leadership of APC? Why have they not done anything about this? This is what causes distrust between government and the citizens. I sincerely hope that the president is very sincere and he means business. Truth be told, if the entire nation will agree, the president, his government, they are servants of the people, and they must be responsive towards the yearnings of the people and be responsible to ensure that we have an orderly society, because the primary purpose of government, as enshrined in our imposed constitution, the primary purpose of government is the welfare and the security of citizens. And when we now shoot those citizens, something is wrong. The tail is wagging the dog. No citizen is important until every citizen is important and every citizen counts, regardless of gender, religion, or ethnic nationality.
Pastor Tunde Bakare, I suppose you have a personal relationship with the president. You were his running mate. Do you still, call him up or text him some of this counsel you are giving now, as a way of, personal interaction with him? I would like to know that. And secondly, in your State of the Nation address, you talked about something that, really got me thinking: infrastructure. And I remember the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "What lies before us and what lies behind us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." Infrastructure. I want you to expatiate on the dynamics of that infrastructure.
Well, let me answer the question from where you started. I must say in the open, one of the reasons I respect the president tremendously is the privilege of unhindered access that he has granted me from the first day of his administration till now. There's nothing I've put in the public space that I've not presented to the president from time to time. And I have a catalog of them. None of them is based on personal need or need of a particular group, but most especially what will give him a legacy. I presented, as soon as he came into power, what I called the Buhari legacy, and put it, bound it together and gave to him. And when the Erufai committee was set up to look into these issues, I also gave that particular legacy blueprint, as well as other documents that will lead to the restructuring of this country. I've been on the verge of this campaign for more than 15 years now, and I did the same with President Jonathan, and I did much more with Mr. President. I thank him for the privilege of unhindered access, and time will tell what we have said and shared in private moments. And he did mention that in a public letter, a letter he wrote as tribute for my 65th birthday, that the things we have shared privately, it's about time to begin to implement them. And I'm looking forward to the last 2 years of his administration, because 2020 is already gone, but 21 and 22 are the critical years of his administration, and I'm praying, hoping, wishing, and doing everything within my own personal power, ability, and the ability of others that we have influence in the areas we have influence, to ensure that it begins something that will outlast him, because there's not the use of life is not better than doing something that outlasts your life. I hope that will happen. And now come to infrastructure. I mentioned 4 concrete things. The first one is culture, which is our value system. The second one is structure, which is the system of government we have adopted. The third is infrastructure, to enable the structure that we are setting up to begin to affect the lives of our citizens, namely what you call the dividends of democracy. And the infrastructure is to look into the grievances of the past among ethnic nationalities, among different people in the different zones of our nation, and set up a presidential commission for national reconciliation, reintegration, and restructuring, to listen to these grievances, to come to the table of brotherhood with mutual respect and trust, instead of this mutual distrust that is producing perpetual conflicts in our society. Interest simply means oppose. Infrastructure means if you don't take care of those grievances, you will destroy the structure, you will destroy the infrastructure, as you saw in Lagos State a few days ago, when everything we have labored for, that I've spent money on, were burnt down due to what I call the rage of the poor. Infrastructure is critical. If we don't look into them, they're fundamental, they're foundational, they can destroy everything that we hope and we have invested in. We hope to see in our country.
Well, Pastor Bakare, in that your State of the Nation address on October 25, you said that the NSAS protest is not just about police brutality. You said it's about the failure of governance. Were you invariably saying that the Buhari administration has failed? Because you then went a step further, your concluding paragraphs, to say that Nigeria needs a leader like Nelson Mandela. Now, where would that leader come from? Will it come from someone like you? Because you were quoted in 2019 as saying that you plan to run for presidency in 2023 and become the 16th head of state and head of government of Nigeria. Then secondly, you talked about a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which would look at all the issues about how to produce a new Nigeria. But I've heard you this morning also referring to the 2014 National Political Conference. Who is going to find the political will to set up a Truth and Reconciliation Commission when past conferences, past commissions produce no result?
Well, you asked too many questions in one. I will attempt to answer them. The first one has to do with this administration. I did not say in any way or form or shape that this government has not been trying its best, but whether its best is good enough for the citizen is for citizens to answer. But let me say this. The NSAS protest, I said it's not just about police brutality, it's about governance. And that's why I changed the word or the acronym SARS as Special Anti-Robbery Squad to State-Aided Robbery Squad. Because the men in the ministry, the permanent secretary, and the contractors outside who are inflating contracts, they are SARS too. Those in the National Assembly who are padding the budget and voting useless constituency project allowances, they are part of SARS. The judiciary or those in the bench who are removing the blindfold on Justice Lady and looking at the rich and the poor and favoring the rich against the poor in their judgments, they are part of the SARS. Let us not limit it to police brutality. And look at the policemen. How much do you pay them? What is their welfare package? Where do they live? What the condition, the environment of their barracks? You are putting arms in the hand of a people who are already depressed before going out. So under pressure, they pull the trigger and kill the citizens. Police brutality is rooted in the way they are trained, in the way they are remunerated or compensated for the services they render to the nation. So it is not just about Buhari administration, it's about all the government in Nigeria from 1999 to date who had been you can describe it all as misgovernance, because we are still battling with the same issues so many years after democracy had come. Where is electricity? What happened to electricity in the past by different administrations? Where is security? Budgetary allocation for arms and ammunition and to take care of our armed forces. Nobody is holding anyone accountable. And thank God for the young protesters who said, enough is enough. We need accountability in these areas. And you can see the success of their endeavor, that within 5 days, the government buckled and said, we disband SARS. But we don't want SARS as in the police or the ones engineering brutality within the police, because all eggs are not that bad. There are some good police officers, and they must be compensated. There are officers who have lost their lives as they were trying to protect citizens. They must be recognized also. It's only some rotten apple within their system that have corrupted the whole thing. We need to look into those things that the young people demanded for and begin to respond positively, concretely, with timelines to show that government is very responsive and government has changed its usual status quo mindset of just making promises that they are not willing to keep. Now, I also mentioned Nelson Mandela, but it was not the only one I mentioned. I said we need leaders like Nehemiah in the Bible who will respond to protests and charges of oppression, not with the sheer force of arms and ammunition, but a lifestyle, a compelling leadership lifestyle that will make people to say, we know he's telling the truth and we are willing to follow him. Mandela did that, and many other leaders did so. And one of the gestures that the Buhari administration did, far above the ones before him, was the recognition of June 12 and the role of Abiola. But we must build on that and say, look, what can we do more for the citizens of our country, that they will enjoy the benefits of the dividends of democracy, the purpose for which they were voted into power. If you ask the citizen to score this administration, when Buhari came into power, the profile, his posture and everything was so high. And if you look at it today, he's so low. That's the truth. And you do not need to fear a person who will tell you the truth to your face. Those you need to fear are those around the leaders, but are so cowardly to tell them the truth, but to share the same thing behind them. One of the things that God would do for President Buhari, that I pray, is that God delivers him from wicked counsel and wicked counselors who tell him life is sweet, everything is going well, but they are not giving him report on the street of what is happening in our nation. That will change, because God rules in the affairs of men. He gives it to whosoever he wills, and the hearts of kings are in the hands of the Lord, like the rivers of water, he directs them. Let me say this before I close. In 2019 or 2015, it looked like we have a long time. The 4 years had gone. We are into the second year of the present administration, and it's going to end soon. Time is going. Anyone who is thinking of legacy, this is the best time to go into action. Maybe 2 things, maybe 3 things that he will be noted for, and people will say, in the days of President Muhammadu Buhari, Nigeria took a giant leap in these 3 categories. Without that, it would just be like he came and he left, and not much can be ascribed as achievements of his administration.
But are you running in 2023 as 16th president, as you were quoted to have said?
Every Nigerian citizen who has aspiration to add value to this country is at liberty so to do. It is my fundamental right to run if I choose to, and it's my fundamental right to desist from running. But let me tell you this. I mean every word of what I spoke. I cannot just fold my hands or say, well, let it continue. No. Every Nigerian, and my support for President Jonathan was based more or less on what Chief Obafemi Awolowo said in his speech, thesis, I've forgotten the title now, thesis, antithesis, and what have you. And he said the day is coming when the presidency or the prime ministerial office will be liberated, that someone from minority will rule this country. It happened already in the time of President Jonathan. I'm a citizen of this country, bona fide, by the grace of God, and I intend to contribute my quota. But let me say this to you, it's not a matter of life and death. If we have right people in power, I will support them. And if I offer myself and people support me, so be it. I'm not taking that word back. I have something to offer my country, but it's all left for my country to say, we want you. I cannot impose myself on them. And I challenge every right-thinking patriot to rise up and let us join hands to fix our nation. And if God so designs it that I'll be the 16th president, well, Reuben Abati, I will consult you also as one who has something to offer in terms of media and in terms of spokesmanship that you have done before, so that we can have accurate speech for accurate moment, and leadership will not, in moment of anxiety and perplexity, they will not show enough compassion in the things they say to the public. We need to order this society aright. So take that as old school invitation for you and say, come, let's sit at the table and think. Yes, 2023, I'm ready, I'm prepared, but I have no war chest to impress anybody. All I have is quality service. And God, who took David from the sheepfold to shepherd the nation of Israel, has trained me for over 30 years to be able to add my value to this country. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Abati does indeed have an awful lot to offer, as do you, sir. And because you mentioned it, June 12th, I take this opportunity to thank you most sincerely. Rufai asked you whether or not you still have the president's ear. I know that you do, because we saw that you do. The whole country saw it, in spite of whoever tries to take credit. The credit goes to you. Thank you. But my question now is the level of animus that's been directed at the federal government, which you referred to. Earlier on in this show, when we were reading the news headlines, I referred to the fact that President Buhari won on that change agenda based on two planks: restructuring and his character. The Nigerian public has invested a lot of hope in President Buhari as a person. I would like you to address this and what he can do, because you made a reference to his legacy. He is making strides. He seems very interested in electoral reform. But how can he really cement himself in gold letters in the Nigerian history books? Because we all know about President Buhari and his boldness. I belong to everybody and I belong to nobody. That went down with, huge applause in Nigeria. However, recently with the NSAS protest, he came out to say, when he finally addressed the nation on that protest, that his gesture, his conciliatory gesture to changing SARS to SWAT was taken as a weakness. And that did not go down very well. It sounded sort of autocratic. What should President Buhari do now in terms of his legacy?
Well, it has a lot to do, like we said. Promises that are not fulfilled will lead to discouragement and distrust with the other side, the citizenry. And for the first time in our nation, I could see that the next generation is ready. We labored in this nation to restore voice to the voiceless, and by God's grace, these young men and women have found their voice, and I trust God that they are not going to go back because of a few gunshots. There are others who paid heavier price in the past. It's regrettable that the military could shoot, or whoever shot into those people. It is painful and it is unexpected, and therefore, somewhere along the line, part of his legacy is to fish out who actually ordered the military. I've seen deniers. It was the state governor, Sanwo-Olu, that invited them, and it was passed on to government of Lagos State, and we invited them because of protests that has gone haywire, but we didn't ask them to shoot. All this denial and hiding under the umbrella of one finger would dent his administration because he's the commander-in-chief. And he must fish out those. If we have to apologize for the blunder that took place on that Black Tuesday, then he must humble himself and apologize to the nation and say, we are sorry for what had happened. I've taken upon myself to apologize to those young men and to also table side by side with my apology what the generation before them accomplished. President Buhari still had enough time to leave a lasting legacy. Promises were made in the manifesto of APC regarding the restructuring of this nation. I take it on board that sometimes promises are made without knowing exactly what situation exists. But now that they have found it, it is in the best interest of President Buhari and his legacy, if he desires one, and I know he does, to come clean and say, on the issue of restructuring, these are the challenges. Our party had formed a committee. This was what they brought for us. This is why it's... Because I still listen to my brother, the governor of Kaduna State, stating that he would not know why these things are not being implemented till this time. That does not show sensitivity to the yearnings of the people. And I tell you the truth, I'm not prepared to be a person's friend without telling that person the truth. And I expect the person also to tell me the truth. Truth sets free. We must find out what has gone sour, and we must come clean and say, hey, let us now say it. Let us place it before the citizens and address them. The Nigerian citizen that I know, and I've grown up in this nation now for a while, I've followed the political history and the trajectory of our nation. Nigerian people are easy to please. They are easy to please. But we need to come to terms with their grievances, their aspirations, their yearnings, and address those issues frontally in a practical manner with timelines. There's no time to waste any longer. Legacy is important so that it will not just be a footnote that he came twice as a military head of state who was overthrown, and he came again and sought power, and not much was accomplished. We thank God for all that he has been able to do, or his administration has done, but to whom much is given, much is required.
All right, as we start to wind things down, I've got two questions for you. A part of our national anthem says, and which I heard a lot of the protesters sing out so loud, and young people, was to serve with heart and mind, and to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. I mean, how can we build that nation, and how can we get young people to truly want to serve with heart and mind for their country? And secondly, I want you to cast your mind back, because you made great push and incursions with the Save Nigeria group. If you look back at the Save Nigeria group episode, what could you have done better? What are the lessons you learned from that? Occupy Nigeria 2012 protest. What could you have done better?
Thank you very much, Rufai, for that question. I'm not going to go into comparing Save Nigeria Group with what happened recently that led to the disaster of the Black Tuesday on the 20th of October, so that it does not appear that we blow a trumpet. But if I will say this, there was a clear leadership vacuum in what happened there among the young people. Save Nigeria Group began at the Sheraton Hotel when I convened the meeting, by the grace of God, of civil society organizations against what looked like power hijack in our nation. And we had an engine room of leaders and elder statesmen whose counsel we sought before we stepped out on the first March, I think on the 12th of January of that year. And if you had looked at our different campaigns, I led civil protests 4 times in this nation, twice in Abuja, once in Lagos, and eventually at Ojota when we were challenging the corruption in the subsidy regime. Now, each protest had a starting point and a finish line. We did not occupy a major road artery like they did, because my freedom stops where the nose of another citizen begins. I realized people who called me and that people were trying to move to go to hospitals they couldn't, and we should talk to these people, and we did our best to call them. First, I did say to them, to those influencers among them that we spoke to, that if you say you have no leaders, you're more or less getting ready to commit a social or a class suicide. And I gave them the example in the book of Judges, chapter 19, 20, and 21, when there was no king in Israel and every man did what pleased him. At the end of it, in chapter 21, a whole tribe was wiped out. They had to look for young women to start building that tribe again. You must have leaders, because the moment, with 5 days of that protest, the government had buckled. Even in war, you must declare the objective for which you want to fight, the goals, what you want to accomplish, and send it to your enemy. And then, number 2, you back those requests with action, which was the protest that took place. But number 3, even in war, everything will end up in the negotiation table. They needed to have chosen leaders they trust. There was so much mistrust that we can't, others have done it like this, it didn't work, therefore we have no leaders. No. You negotiate from the position of strength, immediately the government buckled. And those are some of the lessons we need to learn, they need to learn. And one other thing that I advance is they should not look at the generation before them as useless, as having done nothing. If they did not labor, if those men did not labor, if the Wole Soyinkas did not go to prison at the age of 33 for 22 months, and all the names that are listed who played one role or the other, if the likes of MKO did not fight to the end, up to the point of death, everyone standing on red carpet had nothing to stand upon now. It played a significant role for our democracy, and I'm so grateful to God that President Buhari eventually acknowledged his role and declared June 12 public holiday instead of just naming one university or the other after him. His name is immortal right now because of what he did. All those past heroes, including our founding fathers, what they did must not be trivialized. We build on the accomplishments of past generation and continue to move on. As for justice to be done, a nation where justice and fair play rules, in such a nation, judgment must be delivered expeditiously. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes, when judgment is not speedily executed, the hearts of men are set in them to do evil. If you let the perpetrators of Black Tuesday go scot-free and nothing concretely is done, then there will be repeat performance. You will repeat the blunders of the past. Those who don't learn from history will either repeat the blunders of history or they become history themselves.
Well, Pastor Bakare, just before we go, you've done a comparison of what happened in 2012 and what happened in October 2020. And one major feature of the NSAS protest was the social media. Now, quickly, before we just wrap up, do you think the time has come to regulate the social media? We have less than a minute.
Well, everything in life, including your freedom and my freedom, freedom and liberty without boundary is dangerous. I'm not asking for excessive regulation where citizens will be banished, but we must find a way within our law to use social media productively and not to fill it with false news and negative news that can incite people or bring chaos into society. We must use all these tools to advance the development of our nation and the progress of our people.
Thank you very much, Pastor Tunde Bakare, for joining us on the morning show and for your brilliant views about national issues. Thank you very much indeed.